So for this mock exercise, we're going to take a look at a company called Sea Surf Campground. And in this exercise, we're going to calculate, based on the information provided to us, we're going to calculate income, called net earnings. We're going to prepare a statement of retained earnings and a balance sheet. So here's the question. So this question, it says Sea Surf is a public company. Sorry, it's a public camping ground in Ocean Park National Park. Here's the following financial information as of December 31st. So again, we're giving you a list of accounts, end of the year balances for December 31st. And we're asked to first determine the net earnings, and then B, asked us to prepare a statement of earnings and balance sheet for the year. So based on this information, we need to figure out what are the elements that we need to capture as part of earnings. Okay? So looking at the first one, revenues. So revenue is definitely part of the statement of net earnings. So we'll add that in there. So revenue from camping fees. Okay, that one is $137,000. Next, I see that there's another revenue called general stores. That should be part of statement of retainer, statement of earnings. $35,000. Now I notice there's no other revenue, so I would like to do a subtotal called revenues, total revenue. Now, going back to the data provided to us, let's take a look. What about accounts payable? That's a balance sheet item. Cash is a balance sheet item. Equipment's a balance sheet item. Income tax expense is an earnings item, an income statement item. And the other thing I can see is the operating expenses. Now, supplies is interesting because you don't know if that's supplies that were consumed in the current year or supplies that are sitting on our warehouse at end of the year for next year's consumption. So normally questions like this, they would be a lot more clear in the wording. So supplies could mean supplies inventory. It could mean supplies expense. In this question, it is considered inventory. So I'm going to write that down. But needless to say, the language and any question you'll see is going to be clear what type of supply it is. So there's really only two expenses, operating expenses and income tax expense. So I'm just going to list down total expenses. Okay, it's composed of operating, and that one is 128, and income tax. Now this is not a proper format income statement. We're going to do some exercises, some other videos to show you what the proper format is in creating an income statement. But definitely, the question only asks us to calculate net earnings. So I'm just going to calculate what that is, okay? And that gives me 135. So the net difference is my net earnings of 37. Okay? Now, so the first thing we need to do is calculate net earnings. Why? Because we need this number as one of the elements of the statement of retained earnings. That was part B. So in the statement of retained earnings, and remember, what was the definition? The word retained earnings means any earnings that the company has earned since inception, since the time the company was set up, okay, that have been retained, i.e. that haven't been dividend out to shareholders. So in this case, we need to prepare the statement of retained earnings in good format. So let me show you the proper format for retained earnings statement. So first of all, the heading has a three-part heading. So first, you need to state the name of the company. So it's Sea Surf Campground. Name of the company. The next is the name of the statement. So in this case, the statement of retained earnings. So it's always the name of the company in proper legal form, name of the statement, and the period it covers, the statement. And because this is a period of time statement, it should say for the year ended December 31st, 2009. Okay? You can't just say December 31st, 2009 as a date, because by stating that, it means that this statement is a point in time. A point in time means the date of December 31st, but this statement really captures the period of December 31st. So we're going to start with the retained earnings, January 1st, and that one was given to us. It's 18,000. Okay. There are only two things affected. One is we're going to add the net profit, net earnings. And that one is 37,000. That one is the one that we calculated as per above. Okay. And then we're going to subtract dividends. And that one is 14,000. And that was given to us, right, in the question. So we were told that the dividends was 14 in the beginning, retained earnings was 18. And dividends is essentially amount that we paid to each shareholders at the end of its fiscal year as a form of return on their investment. And you can only issue a dividend if you have retained earnings. Okay, so that is definitely something that we're going to talk a bit about later, but you can only declare and pay out dividends, cash dividends, if there's any retained earnings. In this case, we do have some earnings. So that will give us, so I have to put a subtotal here, less dividends to give us retained earnings at the end of the year. Okay? So a couple of takeaways here. First of all, this is called the statement of retained earnings. And this statement can only be completed once you've calculated or completed the statement of earnings. So you can see that the income or earnings is needed to help us complete the statement of retained earnings. And the date, the heading is important because it's a three-part heading. The first part will indicate the legal name of the company. The second line is the nature or the statement, the name of the statement, statement of retained earnings. And the third line is the date of the statement. And this statement, because it captures January to December, it is called a period of time, so you need to say for the period ended December 31st. Okay? Now, the second part of the question asks us to prepare a balance sheet for the year. So that's usually the third statement, because you'll see we're going to need the number, we're going to need this number, statement of retained earnings, the end of the year retained earnings, as to help us prepare the balance sheet. Okay? So again, for the balance sheet, there's a three-part heading. The first part is the name of the company, so it's C-Surf, Campground, Inc. What's the name of the statement? It's called the balance sheet, or sometimes called statement of financial position. Okay, let's just say it's balance sheet. And again, the third line on the heading is the date. And in this case, a balance sheet is a point-in-time statement. It captures how much does C-Surf own and how much are they what are their obligations at a point in time at a date. So this one should always read as at December 31st, 2009. So you either say December 31st, 2009 or as at, just to be clear. Okay? Now, normally in a balance sheet, there is a format. And we're not going to focus on what type of balance sheet this is, because there is different styles of balance sheet. But because this question requires us to just do a quick balance sheet, first we want to list all our assets, just like the equation, the accounting equation A equals L plus SE. We're going to start with an asset. And you'll see from reading through, you've got cash for $7,500 is our first line of asset. Okay, next is supplies. And again, we know that it's supplies inventory, so it should be an asset because it will help us. It's a resource that the company owns and controls that will be consumed the following year. The benefit will be recognized in the following period. So that's called supplies inventory. And the other component of asset, it's called equipment. Notice how I'm listing the asset in order of liquidity. Which of these assets are the most liquid, most closest to cash, or quickly converted to cash? Okay, so that's what it is. All right. Now, next is we have a segment called liabilities. In this case, we've got the first obligation that's the most current, again, the one that is in order of liquidity, in order of payment. Due date is accounts payable. The next is notes payable. Those are the only two. Total liabilities is $58,000. And now I want to, next part is shareholders' equity. Just like the equation A equals L plus SE. And remember, shareholders' equity is made up of two components. Common shares. These are investments by owners. And that was given to us is $30,000, and retained earnings. And that retained earnings came from the statement of retained earnings, the $41,000. So we know that this $41,000 is going to be used in the balance sheet. If I add that up, I get 71,000, and my total liabilities and shareholders' equity is 129. And you see that the equation balances. See that the total liabilities and shareholders' equity equals the total asset. Okay, thank you.